Well, good morning. The countdown to Election Day marches on, and we're now just a little over 3 weeks away. Today we continue our series intended to help you get to know the Upper Michigan candidates running for the Michigan House of Representatives. It starts right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Here's your host, Don Ryan.
Well, there are 3 state house races in the central and western Upper Peninsula, and today we're going to meet the candidates who are on the ballot for the 108th district seat, which includes Delta, Dickinson, and Menominee counties. The race in this district includes the incumbent Republican Bo Lefebvre, who was elected first 2 years ago, and the Democratic challenger Bob Romps. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Good to have you both with us.
Thank you.
Okay. What I'd like to do is make sure people get to know just who each of you really are. So I could read your resume, but Bo, I know that you're from Kingsford High School graduate. You were working on a law degree, but tell us more about yourself.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here today. You know, I grew up in Iron Mountain area, went to Kingsford High School, and went 4 years to Michigan State University, got my bachelor's degree, and I really thought I wanted to be a lawyer, so I went off to law school. But every minute that I was gone, I kept watching on Facebook and on social media and hearing about friends of mine that had to flee the Upper Peninsula to get a job. And when I realized that it was the high cost of car insurance and an inability to get internships at our manufacturing jobs that was keeping people and pushing them out of the district, I decided I needed to step up and do something about it.
Okay. And Bob, tell us a little more about yourself. I know you're from Gladstone, and presently you work at Pathways.
Yeah, I've been at Pathways for 30 years. Family been in the UP since 1977. My wife and I have owned a business. My wife Linda owns Browsette Fit in Escanaba. We take care of cancer people. I've been just a big part of the community. I didn't like the way things are going on here, and so I just got out here. It was a natural progression for me to help my neighbors, because I don't think our neighbors are being helped, and I figured that's why I better step up to the plate and help my neighbors. And once again, we don't have the jobs. The auto insurance is too high. I'm hearing it at the doors, but you know, it's been going on for 8-10 years that people are trying to fix it. We just got to get it done.
Let me ask you a question. You know, when we talk to people running for office, they say they're going to represent the UP, and I think they do. But there's tremendous pressure in Lansing to be part of a party caucus. Tell us why you think you can be an independent representative in Lansing.
Well, you know, I've lived my life. I've seen both sides. I've got brothers and sisters who are Republicans also. We all were raised the same way. I think people are more alike than they're different. I think that the only way we're going to get things done is if we cross that bridge instead of dividing it and go across the aisle instead of yelling across the room. That's the only way things are going to get done. I think that, you know, I've spent time negotiating contracts through the years, and I know how to negotiate, and I know what's right and what's wrong. I know what's fair and what's unfair, and I know that we're not getting our share in the UP.
Bo, you've had some experience with this already now, and you're in the party that's in control, but that, of course, can change. How do you see your role as an independent legislator, you know, working for the best interest of the Upper Peninsula?
Yeah, I think I just have to mention that it is difficult sometimes when people are in their, you know, their chamber and then their caucus room and the other side. But I always remember back to the first couple of months that I was in office with John Keevala, and he's such a good man. We disagreed heavily on some issues, but more often than not, John would get up from his seat and he'd run across the aisle, he'd come over to me and he'd start pointing his finger and yelling at me and trying to get me to understand the side of the issue he was on. And some days we'd go back and forth on that, but it was never in anger. There was never any bitterness. We got together on UP issues. I miss John. He was a good man. I want to continue to have those relationships with whomever is elected next in this next cycle.
Well, let me ask you, what do you see as the key issues in this campaign?
I think the biggest issue for Michiganders right now is the high cost of car insurance prices. We pay on average $1,000 a year more than our neighbors in Wisconsin. We had a bill on the House floor last year, 5013, would have saved the average family $1,000 a year. Unfortunately, 90% of one party and a third of the other party voted no. And You know, it wasn't a perfect bill. I'll be the first to admit that. But we need people that go down to Lansing that are going to fight for lowering the cost of living in the Upper Peninsula, and that includes car insurance reform, and that includes the only two ways to fix it is a fee schedule for out-of-control costs and allowing drivers to have choices.
Okay. Bob, what do you see as the key issues in this campaign?
Well, I agree. Auto insurance is the thing that comes to mind right away when you knock on doors. People are talking about that constantly. It's got to be a bipartisan bill, and there are people out there that want to do it bipartisan-wise. It's the only way it's going to get fixed permanently. You know, we can't have a bill that's going to be out there and 4 years from now we have to relook at it because the insurance companies didn't make enough money. That's not acceptable to me. We're just spinning our wheels then. That's one big issue. The other issues out there, I know mental health has always been close to my heart. We've been underfunded for years and years and years. The prisons are filling up with people that are mentally ill. We've got opioid crises because of it. We've got meth. We've got all kinds of different things that are going on, and it's due to the fact that we're not seeing the people that we need to see because they don't have the money to do it.
Okay. Those are important issues, and there are more, and we'll talk about some more of those issues in just a couple of minutes. Back with more on the Ryan Report after we take this break. This morning we're focusing on the State House race in the 108th District. Joining me is Representative Bo Lefebvre on my left and his challenger Bob Rumps on my right. Let's talk about education. And first of all, let's talk about education at the university level. There are reports frequently that Michigan is still falling behind the rest of the country in turning out graduates. There are issues about what students are paying for an education in Michigan. Representative Lefebvre, what are your thoughts on, are we doing enough to support higher education?
No, I don't think we are. I think we need to put more money into not only higher education, but also our K through 12 and our community colleges. I think we need to do a better job of steering students into the right education, though, as well. One thing that you can do is, it's called dual enrollment. I did it when I was in high school. A student in 9th through 12th grade can dual enroll at a community college while they're still in high school, get credit, and at the end of their high school career, they can have an associate's degree already. So that saves a ton of money. Now, regardless of if you're going into the skilled trades or if you're going off to be a lawyer or a doctor or a neuroscientist, I think it's really important that you think about getting at least an associate's degree. So one of the things we can do to cut down on the higher education costs is encourage students to get into that dual enrollment. That way they can save a bunch of money and stay at home for the first 2 years.
Bob, what about your thoughts? What do you think we should be doing in education? First of all, starting at the university level. Well,
you know, my son-in-law and daughter, my son-in-law graduated from Michigan Tech about 10 years ago. He ended up with a GPA of 3.88 in electrical engineering, very smart, got scholarships, and got a lot of scholarships. A lot of his school was paid for. And yet, they still have a student loan bill of $500 per month that is going to continue for another 10 years. So you're looking at 20 years outside of their education. After they're done, they're still going to be paying these bills. We need to help these kids. I mean, if we have to, at one time the state funded 75% of universities, now they're funding 25%. We need to get some of that money back to these kids so that they don't have that debt in the future. And that's what I'd like to see done. The money come back to the universities ahead.
What about the K-12 systems? Are we doing enough for them?
No, the schools, they're underfunded. They gave a little bit back last year, but they're still grossly underfunded. They're looking at probably about $1,600 per student, what I looked at, which is unacceptable. We need to get some of that money back. We reappropriate the money, and the budget needs to be held to the schools. The teachers should not be paying for paper. They shouldn't be paying for pencils. They have enough on their plate without having to deal with that.
Okay, you've had to deal with these budget issues. What are your thoughts? Are we adequately financing K-12 education?
I think more needs to be done to get money into our good K through 12 systems. We have fantastic teachers across the Upper Peninsula. That's why I was honored to push for the biggest per pupil funding increase in 17 years. We have more money than ever before in Michigan's history going to public education. Now, I know it's not enough, but we are making good strides towards that goal. And we also need to make it so we can use our teachers' time wisely. I had a bill, it was the first bill I introduced. They had teachers that had to go and check out the business that students were interning at every 4 weeks. They had to do paper reports. They had red tape and all this nonsense. So I got a bill signed into law that cut it down, and they don't have to do those site visits anymore. Working smarter, not harder, I think is also important.
Okay. TV6 has identified school safety as a major issue and a major concern, and we've done a number of special programs and reports. Do you feel Michigan is doing enough for school safety? And I know there was a lot of activity late last spring.
Yeah, we need to make sure that not only that our kids are safe, but they feel safe at schools. I think it's really important that the Senate take a look at my bill that would start to harden our schools. What we need to make sure is that the principal can press a button at their desk to lock all the interior doors. We need to make sure that the entrances are hardened. In some areas, probably not in the Upper Peninsula, but there probably does need to be some metal detectors some places downstate. We need to make sure the cameras are up to date. But I will say, after these terrible tragedies we've seen, I went and read to students at almost every school district in the 3 counties I represent. There wasn't one of those school districts where I didn't have to push a button to get in, and the camera came on. So we are doing things, and it is getting better, but there's more work to get done. We also need to appropriate the money to make sure they can do those upgrades. And I think there should be an armed officer in every school. It should be paid for by the state of Michigan, not by the local districts.
Bob, what are your thoughts on school safety? And one area in particular, knowing your background and your area of work, is the idea of identifying some of these kids in advance.
Well, yes. I think we need to be proactive instead of reactive on these things. I think it's just, I hate to say it, but it's only going to be a matter of time before something comes close to home here. Where we're going, it's just the way things are going. We need to spend more money on mental health. We need to have counseling in the schools. Bo's right, we need to have lockdowns. I don't agree with teachers being armed though, and I agree with him. We should have officers in the school, and they should be trained. So that being said, I think not enough is being done. We need to do a lot more, because I know my daughter is scared every day when she brings her kids to school and she drops them off.
Okay. We'll have some more for you, more issues to talk about when we get back after just 2 minutes. Again, we're talking this morning with the candidates in the 108th State House race. Michigan has embraced both Medicaid and Healthy Michigan program, providing health coverage for low-income people in Michigan. Bob, we'll give you first shot at this one. What are we doing the right thing? Should we do more? Should these programs be maintained?
These have been tremendous programs. They've helped a lot of individuals that wouldn't have gotten the insurance they needed, the food they needed. I'm all in favor of expanding that if we can. What's going on now is that they're paying for, people are paying out of their pocket for things they can't afford to. They've got to make a choice. Kids aren't eating well. Thank God I was at a school actually in Escanaba, and they've got all the kindergartners there in one sitting. And everybody had breakfast together. They all have lunch together. They all eat the same thing, so they don't have that stigma about getting the free lunch. And I'd be all in favor of that. I think it's great that everybody eat the same thing. That way they're getting a balanced meal. They're not going to the vending machines and buying potato chips and Coca-Cola. We have to expand this and to help everybody.
Bo, Michigan has been in the forefront and really in maintaining these programs. What are your thoughts on where we go from here?
I think it's really important. Part of what Healthy Michigan did was it encouraged folks that needed to help up to understand what healthy living and healthy lifestyles were like. One of the things that was not really fair, I thought, was Healthy Michigan charges people more money based on how much they weigh, based on some of their health risks, if they're a smoker or not. One of the things I don't like about Medicaid expansion and making the government takeover of healthcare is when the government tells you what procedures you can buy and what healthcare is available to you. I'm not really a big fan of that. So I would prefer it if we could make healthcare more affordable, just like I would like to make car insurance more affordable.
Jobs are important to people in Upper Michigan. We've traditionally depended on our natural resources, minerals and forests. You have a controversial issue in your district regarding the possibility of a new mining project, the North 40 project. What are your general thoughts on natural resource development and on that particular project?
I think it's really important that we develop our natural resources. God put those in the ground not to be left, but to be utilized. If you read in Genesis, it talks about using the animals that are at our disposal. I don't see any reason why that wouldn't apply to our natural resources in the ground as well. If the UP is going to prosper, it's going to be using our natural resources, our timber, our gold, our copper, our zinc, our iron, all of those things. It's what made the Upper Peninsula. Now that project is a bit controversial. I've spoken to thousands of residents in Menominee that are concerned with its proximity to the river, but the DEQ and the EPA have signed off on it. Those permits are approved, and that mine is going to start. The next step is making sure there's oversight. As the Vice Chairman of the Natural Resources Committee, I'm in a great spot to make sure that they follow the laws and make sure that they do everything to the letter that they are supposed to.
Bob, what are your thoughts on natural resource development and particularly on the North 40?
Well, they've gotten all their permits. They just could receive their last permit. I think that things need to be done right. They have to follow the laws. I think we need, and I'm going to be the watchdog to do that. I really don't think that having the companies involved in it and having them oversee who gets the permits is the way to go, and that's what a law that was just passed last year. I think that we really need to watch this particular mine being so close to the Menominee River. People are really worried, and I will tell you, I would be lying if I told you that I didn't lose sleep over this issue, and I haven't been there. I wish I could have been there earlier, but I haven't been. We really need to take care of our our environment and our water. So that being said, we have to watch it.
Okay. Need a kind of fairly short answer on this next question from each of you. They've come up with a possible solution for the Enbridge Line 5 through the Straits of Mackinac. Do you support what they've proposed?
Well, I'm glad they're doing something. It's long overdue. That line is 67 years old now, I do believe. I think that it's much better than putting rocks over a pipe and putting it in the water. As long as we can maintain it, it will create more jobs to the area, for one thing, but that's not the main thing. We have to protect our water. We have to protect our water.
Your thoughts on that issue?
Yeah, they've done two things that they're going to do with this Pipeline 5. Number one, which more affects the Upper Peninsula, is they've identified river crossings where if a spill were to occur, it would lead to a really bad problem. They've identified those. They're going to make sure that those sites are more secure and tailor the land a little bit so if a spill does happen, it doesn't go right into the lake. The other thing is they're going to build a tunnel. That way we can get fiber optic cable, we can get electric lines, telephone lines through there. I think that's a great idea. It's going to create jobs, but more importantly, it's going to protect our greatest resource, besides our kids, our Great Lakes.
Okay. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes to hear some final thoughts from each of the candidates. So again, this morning we've been talking with the two candidates in the 108th State House District. I'd like to give each of them a chance to tell you exactly why they think they can best represent your interest in Lansing. And let's start with you, Bob.
Well, I've been around a long time. I'm not a kid. I've raised my family. I've watched my family move away. I've paid taxes. My wife and I have owned a business. We've seen the problems. I've seen what's going on with auto insurance. I mean, it's the same old every year. How many years are we going to run on auto insurance? I think I can cross that aisle. I think I run middle of the road enough to where I can help my neighbors, and I will always take UP residents first, always. Not corporate America. It will be UP residents. And that's why I want your vote on November 6th.
Bo, what are your closing thoughts for the viewers?
Yeah. Well, I think that the UP deserves a strong voice in Lansing. That's why over the last 2 years, I've been able to attend hundreds of community events. I knocked on thousands of doors, and I've driven over 100,000 miles to hear from the people of Dickinson, Delta, Menominee counties. Because I listened, I went to the state capitol and I fought for what we care about. That's why I was able to secure the most funding for our schools and roads in Michigan's history. We cut taxes, and I voted to cut your auto insurance rates. There's more that needs to be done. We were also able to get $500,000 for the Veterans Facility in the Upper Peninsula, the Veterans Museum. I've been fighting for the UP my entire life. I fight for what our beliefs are and our values are, and I'd ask for your vote on November 6th to keep fighting for the Upper Peninsula.
I want to thank both of you gentlemen for being here, and I do want to again remind our audience that this is a big election. The full House is up for election. The Michigan Senate's up for election. We're electing a governor, an attorney general, a secretary of state, and a lot of other people at the local level as well. So make sure you stay informed by watching TV6, Upper Michigan's election source. I'll be back with just a couple of minutes. Well, that's our report for this morning. I want to remind you that if you want to watch again or recommend to someone else that they watch the show, it will be available at uppermichigansource.com. Today's program will be available starting tomorrow afternoon. Thanks to Bo Lefebvre and Bob Rams for joining us today as we looked at the race in their district, the 108th District. Next week, our focus will be on the 109th District race here on Upper Michigan's Election Source. Thank you for joining us. Hope we'll see you again next Sunday morning.